All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. So this video is going to be about unseating an incumbent, okay? And it's not impossible. This doesn't just apply to defense, it applies to all contracts. So unseating an incumbent, and an incumbent is somebody who already holds a government contract and it's coming up for a recompete. And they've most likely had it for base year, 4 option years, 5 years. All right. And you're trying to pursue this opportunity to unseat that incumbent. All right. How do I even know how to do this? Well, my name is Ryan Atencio. I'm a government contracting consultant and I specialize in DOD and special operations or anything soft. All right. Professional services primarily. Most of my career in the Army was in special operations. In the tail end of my career, I ended up being responsible for developing all requirements for my entire unit. So it's tens of millions of dollars in professional services and supplies. I developed all performance work statements, statement of objectives, statement of work, cost estimates, basically the packet that you need to send to the contracting office. And then I would do the technical evaluation and the source selection. I was the COR on everything. So I've seen this from the inside, and I've also had my clients be successful unseating an incumbent, on the private side as a consultant. So toward the end of this video, I'm going to give you a little blurb, some language that, may or may not help you in unseating an incumbent. So, first off, before you even try to do anything like this, you want to determine if you should even pursue a certain opportunity. Okay. You want to read a solicitation and determine, does that government customer even want to get rid of that incumbent, or are they happy with them? All right. And I think there's a lot of pretty obvious signs. Um, Sometimes it's not obvious. I'd say maybe if the customer doesn't know how to write the requirement and make it hyper specific so that it ensures they keep that incumbent, or maybe the contract officer doesn't, help them add that language, which, some do, some don't. It's not really their job. Their job is to be fair and maximize competition. So that's one reason that they might not, they might want to keep their incumbent, but they don't know how. Okay, because it's all in the requirement. The customer only has control in this whole contracting process. They only have control over their requirement for the most part. Performance work statement, statement of work, statement of objectives, which is fine. That's all they need, right? But if they don't know how to write requirements and scope out most of the competition so that the only person that's technically acceptable is going to be the incumbent, if they don't know how to do that, well, then they're at risk of losing that incumbent. But I would say to not pursue it, major red flags, short solicitation timelines, all right, and then really highly specific and recent past performance. Okay, if it's highly specific and recent past performance, relevant past performance, it's most likely aimed at that incumbent, and the people they already have working on the contract, right? Especially if it's combined with a short solicitation timeline. But either one of those, short solicitation timeline, highly specific and recent past performance, those are kind of flags. It's not accommodating. If it's not accommodating at all, the barrier to entry is super high. Okay, you might want to not waste your time and just stay away from that opportunity. At least I would. All right, because if I were back in that seat in DOD, that's what I would do to keep someone we want or to target a vendor who, they had a very particular set of skills that we wanted to learn, whatnot, whatever the reason was. That's what you do. You make the language so specific to them and their past performance, their capabilities that, anybody can bid, but no one's going to be technically acceptable. So if you see those flags, you know, I just would not try to unseat an incumbent if I were you. But it's not impossible to seat an incumbent. It happens all the time. Happens all the time. Okay. And there's a lot of reasons that a government customer, not just DOD, any government customer could want rid of the incumbent. And I'd say a lot of times, from what I've seen, the customer might not have the DOD customer or the government customer might not have a good relationship with the leadership of the incumbent. Okay. A lot of times, commands are constantly changing in DOD. I would imagine in the government as well, not just DOD, but there's always changes of command, and they want to sometimes start fresh or they want to trim the fat. There's a different climate or culture, or maybe they're just abrasive, and they're just not jiving with the incumbent leadership. Um, a lot of times there's too much cost and too little service. So I'd say if you're a DoD customer and you look at the dollar amount that you're spending on an option year and you're just not seeing the services line up. You're like, okay, we're spending this much money and this is what we're getting. Like something is not, adding up here. And sometimes that's not justified. They could be getting those services, but it's the appearance that, they're not. They're paying a lot and they're not getting their money's worth. All right, and that can be due to ignorance or, sometimes it's the truth. They're they're paying a lot of money and the services that they're getting just doesn't justify the cost, or they feel it does not justify the cost. Poor performance, which could, I would say, primarily boil down to a lack of responsiveness, a lack of communication, all right, a lack of proactive engagement. So I'd say a good contractor, all right, they anticipate needs and they offer solutions ahead of time. All right. So basically before they're asked. And it's not like you have to read their mind or anything, but it's, a good contractor, they're going to see problems coming down the road that, the customer might not see. And you want to be proactive and bring those things up before they're a problem, right? You want to be proactive. So if you're an incumbent and you're reactive, or it's perceived that you're doing the bare minimum, well, you're probably going to be seen as a liability, and they're probably going to want to transition away from you on this recompete. So those are just some of the reasons that you would want to get rid of an incumbent. Sometimes it's justified, sometimes it could just be poor communication on the government side. But I would also say, just in addition to that, a lot of times there's people on the incumbent's team, right? It could be multiple FTEs. And say there's like 5 FTEs out of 50, 5 to 10 who are just rock star performers. The customer loves them. They don't want them to go anywhere. Okay. And the problem they have is with the leadership, it's higher up, but at the same time, they don't want to, lose these people who they've deemed mission critical. All right. That happens a lot. I don't think I've ever seen where you know, as the customer, you just dislike every FTE, on your contract. It's usually just a disagreement, at the top or for the reasons I mentioned before, but there's still certain people on there who you want to keep. You do not want to see them go. So when it gets to this key tip, this little bit of language that I've seen work, okay? The language is we prioritize a seamless transition and are fully prepared to onboard any qualified personnel that the customer identifies as mission critical. Okay? That blurb in your proposal. And the reason it can make a difference, I'll say it again. All right. We prioritize a seamless transition and are fully prepared to onboard any qualified personnel the customer identifies as mission critical. So, what you're trying to communicate to the government is we're very easy to work with. Okay. And if there's somebody that you've already identified as a good fit for a role, who's qualified, we're happy to onboard them. Okay. So you can keep the people that you want to keep. That's fine. We're easy to work with. Um, and you got to think on your side as the contractor, that actually helps you because you don't have to staff and recruit these people. And the government's already pointing them out or suggesting, hey, this guy's a really good fit. If you want to be easy to work with, a team player, accommodating, well, it's probably going to be in your benefit to, at least look at, consider, and onboard those people. So if you don't know, the government is not supposed to dictate who you hire. They're not supposed to get you know, that in depth, but at the same time, that doesn't mean they don't want to. As far as a government customer, at least the ones, I worked with, they wanted very specific people who were already kind of pre-picked or pre-vetted, or people who were maybe transitioning out of the service. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that as a DOD customer, I'd say it was important to us, who was on the team providing us support, even though, we know we can't tell you who to hire. At the same time, it's really important that we have some say in the process, even though they're really not supposed to. I don't believe so. You can't dictate who somebody can or can't hire. Okay, so when you put that blurb into your proposal, basically the goal is to, they call it badge flipping. You're gonna badge flip the people on that incumbent contract over to your team, all right? And then you'll use those people who are already there to fill those positions. And then anybody who the government didn't deem as mission critical, well, then you're free to go out and, recruit and hire those people. So it just gives the customer, you're letting them know, again, you're easy to work with. We'll let you keep the people that you want, who you deem mission critical. And we're, yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. I mean, that's as a customer, I'm trying to think, it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. So I'll go over it one more time. To add to your proposal, if you are trying to unseat an incumbent, okay, and you've already made the determination, you've already done your homework, and that requirement is very accommodating. It's wide open. It's not too specific. There's plenty of time, site visits, a lot of dialogue. Like all of your questions are being answered. It's likely that opportunity, they're not married to that incumbent, or they want rid of them. Or if that incumbent is large, for instance, and they switch it to, this is really obvious. If they change it to a small business set aside or service disabled veteran owned set aside, well, that's like a really key indicator that, hey, they do not want that person there anymore. Okay, that's like an obvious one. I'm trying to give you some that are not as obvious, but if it's really accommodating, you're getting all your questions answered, and it's just not so narrowly scoped so that there's no way of you winning it, then I think you have a pretty good chance of unseating the incumbent. And the proposal language, one more time, all right, that's worked for me, or what I, may or may not have seen work, is we prioritize a seamless transition and are fully prepared to onboard any qualified personnel the customer identifies as mission critical. And you're just communicating you're easy to work with, and you're going to badge flip the people that they know, like, and trust, and who already know the mission. All right. And then you'll hire, whoever they haven't deemed as mission critical. And I think that's going to really increase your chance of success when you're going after not just a defense contract, any government contract. All right. If you're trying to unseat an incumbent, it is not impossible to unseat an incumbent. It happens all the time, whether the government, wants it to happen, or if they don't intend for it to happen. There's a lot of reasons, an incumbent can get dropped, and sometimes it's the incumbent's fault. If you've been on that contract for 5 years and you know all the work that it actually takes to, make that mission a success, and you factor that into your proposal and you bid that, but it was never added to the performance work statement, well, you're going to lose. All right. So you only bid what's in the performance work statement. Um, but yeah, I think one more point is another benefit to letting the government pick or suggest who, certain personnel to fill certain FTEs is one, they like, know, and trust them, and have worked with them before. So it's really highly likely that they're going to work out just fine. It's likely they're already located in that area. There's just a lot of benefits to badge flipping people over and letting the customer pick or have a say in who is hired onto that team. It's, it probably sounds very obvious, but that's just another benefit to you as the contractor is one, you don't have to find these people staffing and recruiting. Staffing and recruiting is a high value skill, especially for large enduring professional service contracts, FTEs, putting butts in seats. It's staffing and recruiting. Okay, that is the high value skill. So if they're saving you the hassle, the customer is saving you the hassle of having to do that, that is an advantage. And that person is most likely going to work out. So the customer is actually doing the work for you. But that's all I wanted to share. It might work, might not, but I've seen it work. So that's why I wanted to share it. Consider adding that to your proposal and let me know in the comments if you're successful. If you guys want to learn anything else about defense contracting, please let me know in the comments. And I will see you shortly with another video. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good week.